Hiya, Smirk here. I've stumbled upon something pretty cool that not everybody's gonna like, but I think this game deserves a lot more attention. If you're into non-linear, dark games that emphasize on atmosphere, exploration, and silent storytelling, then you might be into today's topic. Today we're talking about shita, which is Japanese for a few terms, but most consistently it means under or below. This game was the first published game by developer and self-publisher LUN and was officially released on March 3rd of 2023. It normally costs $5 and at the time of this review only has 4 or so reviews, with them all currently being positive. Something about this game is that so little is meant to be known about it up front, and I'm sitting on this pile of experience that isn't reconciled anywhere else on the Steam store page. So, with that in mind, I'll be purposely omitting as much as possible to maintain this game's aura of mystery, but I'll give you a chance to skip past anything that might be considered a spoiler later before I start getting into things that you have to find. For some background on the game, it takes influence from a game called Yume Nikki. Shita was launched as a Kickstarter in January of 2023 with a very modest goal of €150, which was reached and then went a little bit beyond, with 12 backers contributing 239 total euros. You can stumble upon the names of these contributors in the game. The developer posted development updates primarily to TikTok, to which they gained a little bit of notoriety. Not much more than I have, mind you, but enough to develop a small following. In shita, you play as a nameless female protagonist who has a lot to unpack in her dreams. The real world itself is not meant to be the focal point, as the girl's room is composed of a balcony and a bedroom, with the latter only containing 3 interactable items. A note to explain the TV and the bed's purpose, and some vague mention of an objective. The TV is used for saving the game, and the bed is used to go to sleep, where much of the game takes place. Once you fall asleep, the girl has 5 base dreamscapes to explore, all of which I've self-titled: Trippy, Hand-Drawn, Red-Eye, Forest, and Swamp. More often than not, you'll be exploring these dreamscapes without a map. You'll stumble upon creatures both friendly and harmful, points of interest, both interactive and seemingly docile, and gateways to other places of all varieties, including but not limited to the calming, cold, surreal, and outright vicious. You may find that the deeper you go into these dreamscapes, the less dreamy they become, which is surely a nod to the English translation of the game's title. If you find yourself trapped or overall spooked, you do possess the superhuman capability of waking up on demand by pressing the F key so that you can inevitably try again. We're going to start venturing into some light spoiler territory. No story spoilers, but I will be talking about things that you have to find in order to experience them, which can ruin some people's experiences. If you want to keep your gameplay experience pure, consider skipping to the recap and rating, which is found at the timestamp on the screen now. Alright, moving on. As of now, I've put about 8.5 hours into this game, and around the 7-hour mark I had encountered an ending, which was clear because the credits rolled. I could probably have hit this ending much earlier, but I'd like to thank Minesweeper for taking all my time. Let's put a pin in that for later, because let's first talk about what I liked. The thing that I liked most about this game was its atmosphere. The various art directions, both visually and audibly, convey precisely what you should expect to be feeling on your adventure. The asset that really captures this the best is the audio. Many of the tracks are short and loop well most of the time. You can usually hear where the loop starts, but I don't think it's jarring enough to undermine its efforts, and these songs could function outside of this game as ambient working music. The music is all credited to the developer LUN and contains a variety of tracks catering to a range of emotions, some of them being warm, some of them being chaotic, and then at times, the sound of silence with something in the distance. It's all very intentional and masterfully implemented. If you wonder what my favorite song is, it's this one. It's just really warm and calming. I hope you'll be able to find it in the game yourself. Not far behind the audio are the visuals. The landscapes are easy to spend time in. There are some genuinely unsettling art pieces, and it's not just shock horror where the developer tries to show you the most screwed up images as possible to bait a reaction. It's the vagueness behind being unable to determine what you're looking at until you stare at it long enough, and then you're like, oh, wow, okay, don't like that. But even in passing, you're like, huh, that's something. The first level dreamscapes are well crafted in that if you have to explore, there is usually things you can anchor your screen onto as you explore to find out if you're looping or not and need to change position. The lower level dreamscapes are much less dense, seemingly large, and can be more challenging to navigate. Lastly, another thing I appreciated was the storytelling. By no means do I feel like I understand everything that the game is trying to convey to me, but there's some strong symbolism with a couple of encounters that are really on the nose and don't leave a lot of room for interpretation. It's with those encounters that led me to my conclusions on what the protagonist could be feeling and dealing with. For those who have played this game, I'd love to know what you think. Just make sure to properly mark your spoilers with considerate spacing for the unknowing. That's about all I've got here, so let's move on to the things that I liked a little less. One of the lesser evils that had caused a big bout of confusion on some parts of my adventure were when things don't respond to being interacted with. There are lots of points of interest that have no flavor text or anything really to indicate that something has purpose. I get that minimal text aspect is just part of the game, but it could have been helpful if something that looks like something needed to happen had something simple pop up when interacted with, like bulging, to signify that something perhaps was ready to explode, or empty, to show that something's missing, instead of just looking like an elaborate set piece and demanding no further attention. Lastly, the thing I disliked the most about this game was the goddamn Minesweeper puzzle. It's so mean. Essentially, you have to play Minesweeper to get to the other end of the hallway. If you're wrong, a mine pops up on that square, you wake up, and have to go through this elaborate dreamscape that takes some time to get through in order to try again. Unfortunately, this was really early on in the game for me. I got stuck on the Minesweeper puzzle around the 20-minute mark, took a short break to explore something else, then tried again from the 50-minute mark onwards for the next hour. So, roughly 1 hour of the first 2 hours of my experience was as fun as pulling teeth because I never wanted to come back here after finishing it, so I committed myself to this pseudo Asylum of Punishment. Fuck! That's about everything I've got, so let's move on to the recap and rating. For commendations, I felt that the atmosphere was excellently captured. What I suspect were the intended emotions were adequately conveyed with a unique arrangement of audio and visuals, all credited to the solo developer LUN. Lastly, the storytelling was creatively sufficient. I found what I felt like was enough information to put some of the events in our protagonist's life together to begin to understand why the dreamscapes are the way they are. For criticisms, some of the set pieces that seemed like points of interest could use some interactive clues to indicate that something about it was special, if it truly was. Lastly, there was a gameplay element that was both extremely punishing and incredibly frustrating for what felt like such a little reward. With all these things considered, I could score Shita as an 8 out of 10. This game is incredibly captivating with its art direction, and its beautiful and surreal themes come together to drive home a heavy, effective, and silent story. I don't feel like I've completed the game fully, as this game is rather large and demanding of a community to find answers together. I wanted to share my experience to help those out there who do like these kind of games to give it a chance, because I'd love to know more, but I don't think I'm capable of finding those answers myself. Admittedly, I do worry about accessibility. $5 seems steep for those who may enjoy this game, especially if this kind of game thrives off of speculation and community gathering. Alrighty, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking the video if you liked the video. Feel free to comment your thoughts below, whether on the game or the video itself. And lastly, subscribe to see any of my future content. Feel free to slap that bell's thick ass to get notifications for new publishings.